Welcome to Refinery Injury Podcast.
Hello, and welcome back to the Refinery Injury Podcast with Brooks Harrison. Brooks is a Texas trial attorney dedicated to representing refinery and plant workers who suffer catastrophic injuries in explosions, fires, and chemical accidents across the South. I'm Shameika Rhymes, and today we're talking about why shutdowns and turnarounds are some of the most dangerous stretches of the year for refinery workers and contractors. Hi, Brooks.
Hi, Shameika. Good to be here.
Good to see you. So, Brooks, for anyone who's worked a shutdown, they know the pace changes overnight. But from what you've seen, what usually makes these weeks feel so different and so much riskier than normal operations?
Well, actually, during a shutdown, the whole rhythm at the facility, the day-to-day rhythm actually kind of flips. And in normal operations, you have more steady routines. You have the same contractors that are out there servicing their maintenance out there. You have same crews, predictable hazards. During a shutdown, you suddenly throw a whole bunch of different new contractors out there. Everything begins to overlap, and with a shutdown, obviously the unit is shut down, and so the point is to hurry and get your work done, to do all the maintenance work to get it back up and running, because every time that unit is shut down, they're not making any money out there. So oftentimes you'll see fatigue setting in. You'll see safety buffers begin to shrink, and then the constant pressures to stay on schedule or create risk all over the place.
Well, the turnarounds bring in huge numbers of contractors who may have never worked together before. So how does that influx of new crews affect the way work gets done on the ground?
It definitely creates a confusing situation within a unit. These crews bring different experiences, different ways of doing things. So sometimes you get a lot of assumptions about who's handling what. And whenever that happens, you have miscommunication creeps in, especially on handoffs at shift change, or whenever you're isolating something and working on something. And that's something out here a lot. Language barriers matter too. A lot of folks are bilingual or just speak Spanish. The white guys are speaking English, and you have the majority of folks that are going to be in a unit during a shutdown are probably going to be Hispanic males. Oftentimes there's female whole watches, and that's where miscommunication happens. I mean, just being able to read a sign in English or a sign in Spanish, depending on where you are, that matters.
Well, with so many jobs happening at once, obviously communication can get messy really quick, even just as we just talked about. But what kinds of missteps tend to happen when multiple teams are trying to coordinate major tasks under tight deadlines?
Whenever you have so many folks working in one area, you'll see a lot of radio chatter overload. I get to hear about that all the time from folks. You'll see incomplete lockout tagouts. In other words, isolating a certain unit. It's been rushed. Maybe it has been done. Maybe it hasn't been done. Or one crew starting work before another crew has been fully cleared or moved on from that unit. It just becomes a quagmire of complication running in a circle. So permits get handed off quickly. Ventilation gets pulled without anyone knowing. And under tight deadlines, there just isn't enough time for solid briefings. And that's part of the problem, the rush.
Well, a lot of equipment gets opened up, taken apart, or restarted during these cycles. So what kinds of hazards show up when machinery or systems that are normally stable are suddenly being torn down or brought back online?
I've run into this in a lot of my cases. And that's when you run into residual product within a contained line, such as a hydrocarbon. You'll run into hydrocarbons being released. You'll run into trapped gases, unexpected pressure releases. And then you have, sometimes weakened structures from all the removal of certain lines. And restarting brings its own massive headaches. And that's actually probably the most dangerous part of any of this, is whenever you shut a unit down, and especially when you start a unit up. That's the most dangerous process at a refinery.
Well, obviously, shutdown schedules are notoriously demanding. So, how does the push to finish on time, regardless of the hour, change the safety picture for workers who are already stretched thin?
It breeds fatigue. It wears people down. The long schedules, the overlapping schedules, the longer hours, less sleep, the night shifts, it all slows your reaction time. And it's tempting to push through those issues, but the point is safety does matter. Safety is not that complex of an issue. Give yourself the time, give yourself the ability to rest. If you need to step away, step away. And that ultimately is something that's very hard to do for refinery workers.
Some of the most serious injuries you handle come from overlooked hazards during these big projects. Without naming details, what is a situation that shows how one breakdown during a shutdown can escalate quickly?
The most common that I get to see are like isolation mistakes, lockout, tagout mistakes that end up leading to vapors being released and or energizing a system that's down. Uh, some folks will stay in that area and suddenly all of a sudden you have multiple exposures rather than just the initial exposure. And that's how big fires and that's how big incidents end up happening.
When an injury happens in the middle of a turnaround, how do investigators sort out which company was responsible, especially with so many contractors working side by side?
That's literally something we do on every single case, and I think that's what separates us from your run of the mill individual lawyer who believes that they're able to handle a case like this. Because it always begins, everybody thinks it begins on the ground. It actually always begins with the contracts and the scope of the work. It gets into the permits, the daily logs, and who is actually directing that specific work. That's of utmost importance. It gets tricky with all the different layers of contracts. You'll have this one entity where the incident occurred have another contract with another entity of their own, but it's a little bit different, which creates two entities, and those contracts often overlap. And we see contracts with the different contractors. So all these different contracts come together to, at the end of the day, allow us to get to who the actual offending party may be, no matter what really happened within the unit.
Workers often feel pressure not to speak up during these peak periods because the job needs to keep moving. So, how does that hesitation affect both safety in the moment and the legal picture later on down the road?
Well, in the moment, those small hazards oftentimes turn into bigger ones because nothing gets reported early.
Mhm.
And then later on, uh, those gaps in reporting do affect our liability case. And so that's why we always encourage, for your benefit and for your legal team's benefit, to report what you see, to speak up, and it'll be okay. They're just trying to get that job done.
My sister always says, if you see something, say something. So,
That's it.
well, for workers heading into a shutdown this year, what is something you want them to stay alert to when the pressure ramps up and everyone is racing against the clock?
Well, everybody feels the pressure, so sit back yourself and realize how that pressure is actually affecting you, and pay attention to it. And when the whole get it done edicts start overriding your gut, slow down, double check your isolations, double check your safety instructions and standards. Pay attention, look out for tired or fatigued coworkers. And again, speak up. The strongest teams often always make room for speaking up.
Well, that sounds like a good place to pause today's episode. Thank you so much, Brooks, for breaking this down for us today.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for today's episode of the Refinery Injury Podcast with Brooks Harrison. If you've been injured during a refinery shutdown or turnaround, visit refineryinjury.com to learn more about your options and how Brooks and his team can help. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review so more workers can stay informed and protected.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.